What's up, guys? It's Coach Gaglione here. It's another edition of the Powerlifitng for the People podcast, and today I want to go over some responsibilities if you plan on helping out or volunteering at a powerlifting meet. And specifically, this is going to be a podcast that is designed to really help our volunteers at some upcoming competitions, but it'll be a good reference either way. And if this is your first time stopping by, I'm Coach Gaglione. I've been involved with strength coaching and powerlifting for over 14 years. And we want to be advocates for the sport, so we want to get more people involved in helping out at events. A lot of times, people don't realize what it takes to run a powerlifting meet, what it takes to run a strength event, any type of event. I think this is like kind of why I love this sport. I love coming together. I love coming together and lifting with my friends. I love challenging myself with people that I care about. I really can't explain it unless you've never done it. But the thing is, what I've found, a lot of people in this age of social media, it's all about me. They want to do the contest. They don't want to give back. So I think it's just a great kind of rule of thumb. For every competition you do, I think it'd be awesome if for every competition you do, you help out and volunteer at another. I think people take for granted like what goes into running a meet, what it goes into hosting a meet, how many volunteers it takes to run some of these huge events, even a local level event, even a backyard meet. So I want to get more people involved, so I want to kind of go through, and every federation is a little bit different, so obviously, especially in terms of judging and stuff, there's going to be different tests and things, but I just want to kind of go over what our expectations are at Gaglione Strength for our volunteers. We're going to go over the referees, the spotters and loaders, and the table help, and we're going to kind of just go through some different things. So the goal of this episode, again, is to educate people that are going to end up volunteering at our meets, but also maybe to give you some insight if you want to become a referee at some point, if you want to become a spotter and loader at some point, if you want to be part of the table help. Everyone's going to have unique abilities and where they're going to shine. Like for me, becoming a multiply lifter, I've had to get really proficient at spotting because the weights are so huge. Our little context, like we used to spot and load for the Westside Pro Invitational. That was the meet director was Donnie Thompson, did a fantastic job. It kind of fell through. We've had to lift 1,000-pound squats and 900-pound benches off people's chests and in the hole before, and you have to be really coordinated. And in order to keep lifters safe, there's got to be a lot of skill involved. And the other piece is nowadays with the internet and things happen so fast. There's a lot of internet judges out there, but I invite you, if you want to be an internet judge, actually sit in a real chair and judge lifts yourself and see how challenging it actually is to judge people live without having to do it behind a computer screen and without having to have instant replay and pause and slow-mo and all these things. So put your money where your mouth is. Actually help out. Actually, if you want to do something, if you want to change the sport, if you want to make the sport better, put your money where your mouth is and go and volunteer at one of these events. So I want to go through some of the expectations of what our platform crew is going to be expected to do and what we're going to kind of do at Gaglione Strength. One of the biggest things is that we want to make sure all the lifters are not just they're not just a number. We want to make sure they're safe. We want to make sure it's a family-friendly environment. We want to make sure they have a good time, a good first experience, so they can continue on and not be a laser tag lifter and be in and out in one or two meets. We want them to do this for a long period of time. Powerlifting is something you should be able to do for years, if not decades, and have a long, fruitful, healthy, happy career in strength. So, sorry about that. And, so we're going to go over some different, and then we will also want to make sure that, people kind of understand their expectations for each job. Okay, so for judges, so in terms of judging, you're probably going to have to shadow some judges, and then for different federations, you're going to have to take a test. I know for like the UPA, we did SPF meets for a while, we did UPA meets for a while, we were unsanctioned for a while, and we had to take some written tests. And I think written tests are fine, but one of the things that's going to be really important as well is also shadowing referees. So if you are interested in becoming a judge, we're going to invite you shadow a referee at some of our upcoming competitions. Our next competition is March 14th, so you could shadow some of our more experienced referees. So these are some of the RPS guidelines. We're going to follow suit with them. So for all powerlifting competitions, there's going to be 3 platform referees, the center referee, which is the head judge, and 2 side referees. The side referee is going to look for different things than the head judge, so that's going to be important. So referee qualifications for the highest level of judge, a head judge, international and national referee should have a minimum of at least 5 years experience for RPS. State and local referees should have a minimum of 3 years competitive experience in powerlifting. So that's going to be important. And then referees must pass practical tests. So that's going to be under a senior member. So in the RPS and the Gaglione strength, part of that might be understanding the rules, but also the other part is shadowing and having conversations to train to be a judge. This is kind of important, especially if you're squatting with a monolift and things like that, or judging multi-ply squats. The center referee is responsible for only giving the necessary signals for all 3 lifts. That's their main responsibility, is to look at, is issue the commands and look at very minimal infractions. So the commands are going to be big. The general execution of the lift, is it a failed lift? Is the bar going down? They may only disqualify a squat for depth only if the depth achieved by the lifter is flagrantly high. So flagrantly high. So that's several inches above parallel. If it's a borderline squat, the center judge is generally going to give a white light for depth. So it's up to the side referees to judge depth, not the front judge. Obviously, in terms of the bench press, it's going to be, a head judge is not going to be able to see things like buttocks lifting off the bench. They're not going to be able to see things like feet moving. So their responsibilities are going to be different depending on the lift itself. So their main duty is to issue the signals and make sure the signals are followed. So they're executing the lifters executing the lifts properly. At Gaglione Strength, we're also going to encourage our judges to let the lifters know what they did wrong, and even potentially give them some, not necessarily coaching, but a little feedback on how they can improve their performance to get credit for the lift. We want them to learn, and this will not happen at a national level, but at a local level, we want to teach the lifters how to be successful so they can get more lifts passed, get more white lights, and be more successful in the sport. For the side referees, the positioning is very important. They want to get in the best viewing position possible. So in terms of the squat, you want to get a direct side angle to see the hip crease and see the knee. If you cannot see the hip, if you cannot see the knee, if you're on a 45-degree angle, or if you're not at a direct side view, that's not going to be the best vantage point. So for Gaglione Strength and RPS meets, we're going to make sure that those side referees have the best vantage point to see that. That's going to be also the case for the deadlift and the bench. You should not be on an angle. You're not going to have the best view to see some of these infractions if you're deadlifting and you're not a direct side view. And you see this a lot, even at international meets. It's pretty crazy. But you should be at a direct side view to the lifter, so you could physically see the hip crease. You could see if the hip is locked out. You could see if the lifter is maintaining depth. You could see if the butt's coming off the bench. You want to make sure that you have the best vantage point possible. And the spotter should be organized in a way where they're not impeding the view of the depth, but keeping the lifter safe. So we usually encourage the lifter, the spotters, oftentimes the first 2 spotters to actually be in front of the lifter, cradling versus the behind the lifter, so they're not actually blocking the hip itself. And then the other spotters can assist from a different angle there. That's typically what we'll do to make sure the lifter is not blocking the hip crease. The spotter's not blocking the hip crease. Same thing in terms of spotting the bench. We want to make sure the lifters are not kind of blocking the barbell itself, not blocking any kind of, the buttocks coming up and things like that. So making sure they're not obscuring the judge's view. When a referee's viewing of the lifts is obscured, referees should position themselves in the best viewing possible. So that means sometimes they may have to get on their hands and knees, sometimes things like that. If the lift is in progress, the rear or side spotters must position themselves so each referee is in a clear view of the lifter. The lifter may utilize their own rear spotter if the squat is if it's requested. At Gaglione Strength, we're going to have very experienced spotters, so that won't be necessary. But in RPS, you are allowed your own spotter for the rear. If the lifter's own spotter interfere with the judge's ability to see the lift, it's going to be a red light, though. So that's kind of something you got to consider. So that's why I'd recommend that the spotters need to be trained well as well. The platform and equipment must comply in all respects to the rules. That's going to be the judges. Make sure the scales work correctly. Assure the weigh-ins are conducted legally and properly. Assure the rules briefing is conducted prior to the time of lifting, between 30 minutes to an hour before the start time. The head judge is also going to be responsible if there's no platform manager present. The head judge is going to make sure the weight of the load of the bar agrees with the weight announced by the speaker. So at least one referee should be issued a loading chart to double check, even if there's a computer program being used. If there's any doubt of a lifter's integrity in respect to intentional or use of invalid equipment or attire to give them an unfair advantage, for example, if they're wearing squat briefs under their singlet for a raw lifter, the referee should inspect the lifter, and they will be banned from competition. If the infraction is minor, the lifter will be warned, but so that might be like a situation where maybe like a sock is touching their knee sleeve or something like that, something minor, they'll just kind of get warned. If it's something major like cheating, like with squat briefs for a raw lifter, they'll just be banned and thrown out. Procedure for referee seeing a faulted lift. The referee will interpret the fault through the lights only, so they're not going to communicate about this. So this is something I see a lot and drives me nuts. The referee should not be communicating with each other until after the lights are issued. So if they want to just kind of get on the same page, or if you're training somebody, you're not to talk about it while the lift is going on. That is not professional. It's not fair. The lifters may not influence each other. The only time the head judge, if it feels like there's the lifter is in a dangerous situation, the head judge might just call the spotters to take it. But other than that, again, there should be no consulting about the lift during the lift itself. Procedure for a lifter being informed of infractions. After the lifter receiving red lights, the lifter may approach the referee only at the completion of their attempt, and the referee shall inform the lifter of the infraction in a brief manner. So that's going to be within a 30-second time period, and then they must exit the platform. And again, a referee should not attempt to influence the decision of the other referees. No condition should interfere with the fair judgment of the lifters. Absolutely no favoritism will be tolerated. All lifting attempts are to be judged equally. So that's really important. So you want to try not to have any biases and we try to make sure that we have judges that are fair and unbiased. And sometimes this can be a little bit challenging if like a judge is like following a certain lifter on Instagram. They kind of know their tendencies. But you want to try to just see the lift for what it is and not kind of think about what the lifter's tendency is and just judge it, which is why you want to hold, if you're a lifter, you want to hold yourself to a high standard always. That way you don't have any issues with kind of favoritism or kind of, a judge might, if they know you personally, they might judge you harder. So we want to try to be as fair as possible as judges. So this is how the referees are going to communicate. Referees may consult each other with any other official to expedite the competition or to correct faults. So if there is like maybe a judge is being overly like lenient with depth or something like that, then the head judge should be consulting with them to kind of ensure that they're judging to the same standard as the other judges. We want to be as fair as possible. Consultations should be kept brief and not interfere with the progression of the competition. The lifter will never be penalized by an official's error and will always receive the benefit of the corrections. And in general, for RPS and for Gaglione strength, if the lift is close, it's borderline, we're not really sure, we're going to give the lifter a white light. We're going to give the lifter the benefit of the doubt. That's what we're looking for in terms of our judging style. In the event of a mislighted lift due to switches neglecting to be reset, resulting in the wrong result being announced, the referees must communicate immediately and let the scoring table know if it was a good or bad lift. So usually if I'm a head judge, I'll usually kind of give a thumbs up if someone had their lower light wrong for whatever reason. And in terms of the referee's dress code, at Gaglione strength, they usually issue them a meat shirt, but referees should be dressed neatly and appropriately, especially if it's a national or level competition. But when available, referees will be required to wear an official shirt provided by the meet director. So that's going to be kind of what's expected in terms of our referees and our judges. In terms of spotting and loading, spotters must demonstrate the ability to hand off on the bench. So they're going to be taught how to hand off properly. Want to make sure that they're not lifting the lifter off the bench. We're also going to be mindful that the rear spotter's main job, the rear or head spotter's main job is to make sure the other lifters are doing their job and also to make sure the bar gets back in the rack safely. The bulk of the work is going to be done by the side spotters. The side spotters are going to cradle the weights. That way, if the bar does go down, if there is some sort of sudden injury, the bar will fall into their crooks of their elbows. They're not going to just hold it with their hands. So that way, that's going to be the strongest position. They will squat down with the weight and follow the bar. That way, if there's any issues, they're in position already. So the main thing with the spotters is be in a position where you're not impeding the judge's view. Be in a position where if the lifter does fail, you don't have to react. You're already in a good position. Spotters will be handpicked by meet directors to protect the lifter from injury. Designated spotters may remove the safety straps if a lifter is choosing to walk out the weight. For us, we're going to advise to keep the safety straps on at all possibilities. But if a lifter is just not really has a really long walkout and they're starting to hit the safety straps, we'll take that into consideration. Competitors must understand they assume responsibility in possible injury, as well as spotters can potentially assume injury. So spotters and loaders must be aware of that. Competitors are allowed to use their own rear spotter. Again, that's up to the discretion of the meet director. We're going to have our own really qualified spotters here. The first plate must be faced inward. All the other plates will be faced outward. That's good from a loading perspective. The collars must be securely tightened, and all the plates must be snug to the bar. That's going to be critical. In terms of the deadlift, in terms of the squat, the spotter and loaders, some of their other responsibilities are going to make sure the hooks are either in or out in the correct position. They're going to make sure the rack height is correct. Sometimes a lifter may need, an in-between rack height, so it might be a number and a couple of pumps. It's going to be required to make sure that the lifter, in the squat, we have to know if they're walking out or if they're using the cradle and just standing up using the mono. We need to make sure after the rack command is given, we help the lifter back into the rack. In terms of the bench press, if the head spotter will be allowed to give a handoff if needed. So you should communicate with the lifter on how they like the handoff, usually like 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2 breath, and then they were going to let go. If you're doing a 3-man handoff, it will be the side spotters will help guide the bar just barely over the hooks. The head spotter will guide the bar out to the lifter, and then the head spotter will say release, and then he will release last. So they'll be trained in all those aspects of the regular handoff and a 3-man handoff in the event there's a bench shirt lifter. And in terms of the deadlift, they're going to make sure the bar is centered. We're going to make sure the bar doesn't have unnecessary chalk caked on it. Might need to sweep the platform to make sure that's tidy. Make sure the bar is clean. Make sure there's always no blood on the bar. Make sure the bar is centered at all times. So that's going to be some of the responsibilities. So the rack heights, the loading of the weights, the tightening of the weights, the cleanliness of the bar, the cleanliness of the platform, etc. And if there's incidental contact with the bar or the lifter by the platform personnel during the lift, and it's not necessarily deemed a disqualification, except if the head judge feels like the incidental contact aided in the lift, and if it was a spotter mistake, then they will get a lift at the end of the round. That's really rare, but it could potentially happen. If the head judge felt like the lifter was in danger, he will say take it, and the spotters will take the weight, and again, it could be disqualification. So that's up to the head judge's discretion, but that's just kind of something. Sometimes if the bar stalls, there might be some incidental contact. As long as it's not aiding in the lift, it's not necessarily a disqualification of the lift. In terms of scoring, the table help is going to be responsible for kind of inputting the scoring. They're going to be responsible for announcing the names. If the lifter is 3 people out, if that lifter is 4th out. If they're the next up, they're going to be on deck. If they're 2 people out, they're in the hole. And again, like I said, 4th out. In terms of records, all-time world records can be broken by a minimum of 1.1 pounds or half a kilo. So it's not going to necessarily be. Weight's going to be certified and calibrated. That's going to be important. in terms of equipment. Requirements for all-time world records and RPS records. Competition must be held under RPS sanction. All referees must be registered as RPS referees. All open all-time world records must be videotaped. If the lifter receives one red light out of the 3 judgment lifts, the videotape of the lift will be evaluated by 3 judges immediately. Upon reviewing of the tape, if 2 out of 3 judges disqualify the lifter is given another attempt to successfully complete the attempt. So that's only for an all-time world record situation. We want to make sure that it's, good lifts gets passed for that. If the lifter is competing in a full power meet, sets an individual lift record, but is disqualified from the competition because they failed to make 3 attempts in other lifts, they will not retain the record. Okay, so that's going to be important. No 4th attempts for records may be included in the total, but they can qualify for individual lift, squat, bench, and deadlift. Okay, so that's kind of some things. The bomb out rule can be in effect as well, so if that's up to the head judge's discretion. Meet director's discretion. Typically at the local level, we'll just let you continue. But if it's a bigger meet, the bomb out rule could be in effect. So if you miss all 3 lifts in one discipline, sometimes you can be out of the meet. So just keep that in mind as well. In terms of the scoring table is going to make sure that there's going to be a paper record as well as a digital record of all of the scoring, a good lift, bad lift. So the table is going to communicate oftentimes with the head judge to make sure that the lifts are good or bad, and then they're going to make sure that the lifters get to them as soon as their lift is done. So they're going to get their next attempt immediately. So they might need to communicate with the lifters as well. The table help will also be responsible in helping kind of expedite things when there's a platform change to make sure that the scoring is kind of ready, the flights are ready. The flights are going to be also posted in the back room to make sure that the lifters know what flights they're in, how much time they have to warm up. The table will also be responsible for letting the lifters know how much of a break they have in between events. Typically at our events, we'll have between 10 and 20 minutes in between the squat and the bench, and in between the bench and the deadlift. The table will also be kind of responsible for helping, make sure that the referees have some food and water and things like that, and that the spotters and loaders have some food and water. They'll also be responsible for just making sure that the flights are in order, so they're going to be in weight order, and then the awards are going to be based off Wilks formula and poundages for each weight class. They're going to be responsible for using the programs to kind of figure out the awards as well. So that's kind of in a nutshell the different jobs of running a meet. So if you feel like the table help, I feel like you need to just kind of get more experience with, so I didn't kind of spend as much time with that one. But spotting and loading is probably the biggest one, and judging is obviously a big one. So those, and then the table scoring can be helpful as well. So the big thing here is we need more people involved in volunteering, so I want to give you guys a little bit of a taste on what kind of goes into a meet. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But I want you guys to just step up and volunteer, and let's come together, because together we can achieve more. I think we can have more great meets. If this podcast helped you, please give it a 5-star review. Check out the links below. Support the program. Thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.